and let's have some fun.
Morning, and thank you. We're going to go dancing in the dark here in a few minutes. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things. I'm Michael Richardson. I'm the Southern California sales support representative for Panasonic. My pretty much number one responsibility is Samy's camera. So I'm here to help celebrate the 44th anniversary. We were talking a few minutes ago. I've been around with Samys and being a customer of Samys for probably, I'm guessing now, over 30 years. So it's been a very, very, very great ride. And through all this, I hope you consider hammering on to Samys.com, checking out their stores. If you need curbside pickup, I believe they're still doing all those things. So please think about Samys first. We're going to get started here in a minute. If you do have trouble with connection, I suggest you log out and log back in, but we should be doing fine. I have Mark Toll from Panasonic and also Panasonic Pete. So I'm going to say hi to the Lumix legend, Mark Toll. He's up in Portland, Oregon. How are you doing this morning, Mark?
Hey, I'm good. Good. It's a beautiful morning here, so glad to join you on this.
Mark will be monitoring my chat. So as we go through this presentation, if you have some questions, drop them in on the chat, type them in. If I have time, I will look through the chat as we go, but Mark's going to answer questions, and then he may bring them up to me as we go through the presentation, or we'll also have time at the end to cover all your questions as well. We'll hang out to make sure we do that. Pete, do you have anything to add?
I just want to thank everyone for showing up on a Sunday morning. And I also look forward to learning how to dance in the dark.
So normally we do all our presentations with a white background, but since we're dancing in the dark, I'm going to blow that out and we're going to go dancing in the dark and we're going to turn everything dark. And I'm going to have a very heavy presentation on a lot of images. We're going to go through a lot of information. So we may go over the hour. I'm going to try and fit it all in. But again, if you have any questions, drop in the chat, type them in. Mark will take care of that and we will move forward. So let's go dancing in the dark. I'm going to start off with light painting. And my inspiration, I like to talk in some of these classes about my inspiration. It's a gentleman named Aaron Jones who, many years ago, and I say many years ago, probably in the 90s, was very big with doing light painting in the advertising photography world. I was a commercial shooter for over 30 years, had my own studio, and I love to light paint. He actually did a lot of stuff for Harley Davidson, a lot of alcohol advertising. But the beauty of being able to paint with light is to be able to shoot a subject and have light coming from many different areas, and then also at the same time controlling exactly where that light may be, whether it's a broad source or a very pinpoint source. Gives you the opportunity of leaving your lens open, but we're going to also talk about some new technology that makes life really easy that I'm going to present to you also today, that makes things really simple. But Mr. Jones had this great thing called the HoseMaster a long time ago. It was this big black box with a light sword or a light fiber optic on it. It was awesome. And in front of the camera, you actually put a shutter and you were able to open and close the shutter. So while you were painting, you could open it up when you wanted to, or you could filter in. You could pop the filter in and soft focus a certain area and hard light another area. It was an amazing tool. And they were able to do a lot of great, great images with that. But we don't all have a HoseMaster to work with, and there's not many of those around. So let's talk about some simple tools to get into light painting. So the stuff that I'm going to show you today on the light painting portion of today, and then we're also going to talk about a lot of high ISO photography. But with the light painting, I use for everything from what's called an LED light bar, or I like to call it a lightsaber, to a flashlight, to just a regular handheld strobe. You can pretty much use anything. And I take the flashlights and I tend to modify them a little bit by putting either some tissue paper over the light source or parchment paper. I might even roll up a piece of foil and make a snoot out of it. So I'll just show you this real quick. This is my little lightsaber here. And the nice feature about this is I can change its color balance by going through the different things. And then I can do like red, and I can paint my product however I wish. I can change its colors. And then I'm gonna also, when I do it like this, it tends to get the police to come around. It does all kinds of crazy things. I will add this. This class was very, very fun for me to put together. But I will say, I almost got arrested twice. So you gotta be very careful dancing in the dark where you are at like 11 o'clock at night or midnight during a COVID situation. The other things that I like to use is even a flashlight. So here's just a very simple Pelican flashlight. You can just use that to spotlight certain areas. See me working on my S5 here with a flashlight. Works very simple. These have a nice push button on the back. Allows me to kind of paint where I want and add texture. If I want to side light something or I want to highlight a logo, I can do all that very quickly. Or I can even do it with a strobe, and I can paint as I move with the strobe. Again, your lens shutter is open. You probably got a very low ISO. I tend to shoot ISO 100 because these things are all very bright. And I've got stopped down to probably f16 or f22, depending upon which lens I'm using. That gives me a lot of depth of field, plus gives me a control of how bright these lights usually are. If I want to open the lens up more, then I will diffuse any of this with a variety of different things, from tissue paper to diffusion material. I might even put a neutral density filter on the camera, and that will allow me to bring down or open up the f-stop, yet that, by using the neutral density filter, allow me to work with these brighter lights. So let's go back to our presentation here. And I'm going to talk about just using a simple flashlight. So here is a flower that I photographed. We did this with a GH5 and a 42.5 lens and just that simple flashlight. And by looking at the difference between the two, you can see what I was really trying to do is get a lot of side light to get detail on those petals of the flower. But at the same time, I wanted to get some light deep inside the middle of that flower. So by doing so, I'm able to basically do this exposure to get the petals where I want, and then basically paint in, or light paint, where I want to get some texture and detail in the middle of the flower. Same thing with the stem. I'm able to light maybe from one side for some items, and then from the other on others. And that tends to trick the eye and give you lots of depth. Here's some playing around with some people. They always say you can't photograph people while light painting. Well, I like to prove everyone wrong. So here I am doing some modelings with some models that have Star Wars attire. I'm not a huge Star Wars freak, but they were from the First Order down in San Diego. And I did all this with flashlights. And then this one was done with a strobe unit. Just great abilities to move your light and create where you want it to come from. Whether you want, in this instance, you want a main key light that's coming from the right, and then you want to create that kind of separation light from the back on the left to separate that arm from the background, create a nice little highlight on the helmet. It gives you a very great way of doing things by using light painting. So the new S5 from Panasonic has a great feature that we've just introduced to full frame photography, and that's called Live Composite. And I'm going to kind of show you here quick with this little video how this works. Go back here, get my video to start. Come on, you can do it. Takes a second for it to roll up. Here it goes. So now you can see I'm going to use my manual focus. And as I'm getting my focus here, I'm going to decide, do I want to focus on the middle of the flower? But probably not depth of field wise. I want to focus a little bit further forward. I have focus peaking on, and on a Panasonic, when I'm using manual focus, I can do this picture-in-picture feature. So it allows me to move around a zoomed in area and check exactly. So this is basically a display what I'm seeing on the back or in the viewfinder of my camera. And I want to get those front petals pretty much in focus. You can see I have the focus peaking on them in the bottom. And I'm working very closely. Now I'm going to set my base exposure. But right now I just want to make sure I have it set where I want to be. I haven't turned the lights out yet. The lights are on in the room. Now I've turned the lights out. Everything is completely dark. I'm going to go to Live View Composite. I'm going to tell it that I want it to start. And then what it does is it asks me to set the shutter speed and ISO. So I set this at 1.6 seconds at f16. And then I press the shutter button. It will say Live Composite starts after the shutter button is pressed. And what it's done is taken a base exposure. So it will hold the base. And now as I paint my flower, you can see it will build each exposure. My histogram is on the bottom left. And I can see what I'm getting. So that's the beauty of the new S5 and the Live Composite feature in full frame photography. I can do light painting, where before, when I did it on film or with a camera that does not have this Live Composite feature, you honestly really never know where you're at, or are you overexposed? Are you underexposed until you see the final image? Here I am able to watch as I build it. Now I've kind of built the flower out, and now what I want to do is build the background. So now you will see me go in with my little lightsaber there with some light and paint. I'm going to zoom up here a little bit. There we go. Scrub into a little bit of it. So now you can see how I'm just painting in the background. A great, great tool that gives me an idea of how I want to build it. As I want to keep going, now what I want to do is probably build in some more light in that middle of that flower. So rather taking up all our time watching the video, I've got a couple of these. Let's just go into some final images. So there's our flower, kind of a medium look. I've painted the background with a nice blue to make that orange pop. This was actually shot with an iPhone. So I used the flashlight on the iPhone and painted the flower, and then also painted the backdrop. So sometimes you can grab whatever you got that emits light and use it as a tool. Now here I'm back to a strobe light. So I'm using the strobe to do this one. And it's coming heavily from the top and the right so that I get that deep kind of shadowy look, so that I'm lighting the petals a little bit, but I want to see a lot of shadow because I want to create depth. And then here I am with the light stick and the flashlight. So I've used the light stick to paint the background. I've used the light stick from the bottom right and the bottom left to kind of get the side illumination of the petals. And then I've used my flashlight with a foil wrap around it to make a little bit of a snoot. And by doing that, I'm able to create that spotlight in the middle and show you exactly what I'm getting. Pretty neat stuff. I'm just going to look at the chat real quick. I don't see anything yet, so we'll keep moving on. Here's two flowers shot with a light stick. And I'm able to not only paint the flowers and leave the background dark, but I'm also able to paint those stems as well. Now, I'm a freak of black and white photography, so I wanted to try floral in black and white. So again, using the light stick and a flashlight, I'm able to create those highlights on the petals on the left to give it a separation from the background, and then highlight some good lighting just on the center of the flower. Now here I've used the light from the light wand in the background, but rather than facing it toward the background, I've faced it toward the camera and put it in that blinking mode. So as it strobes, I'm moving it across the back of my flowers to give it that kind of, I don't know, modern look. Another cool feature. But the amazing thing is what you can do by changing how light works with the product or with your subject. So here, by creating not only bright light to get into the center of the flower, but by creating directional light from different areas, you create that depth and that feel. And that's what we're really looking for, is trying to find ways to create depth and make that flower, rather than looking flat. Like if you'll notice that one that we did with the iPhone, it was fairly flat looking. But then look at these. Look how deep that flower looks. I mean, it's the same flower, but look how much deeper that image makes it look just by changing the way in which the light is working with it. Here's a sunflower. Now I used the light stick with the red. I painted the background red, but then I shot some red across the actual flower itself as well. So I was able to get a really nice kind of combo look. And then here I'm lighting, believe it or not, the petals are very lit from behind. So I'm actually letting the petals of the flower, the sunflower, kind of glow to get that look. And then I am also painting in front to get the interior of the flower, as well as the stem and the leaves. But a lot of those actual capture of the actual floral part of it, or the petals of the sunflower, were backlit with the light stick. And then here I've done not as much. If you'll notice how much they glow here, where here there's more shadow and they get more texture. So there's kind of the difference. It's amazing how much different you can make the same flower, the same background look, just by changing the way you play with the light. So light painting is a very, very creative way to do it. But you can also use live composite mode to shoot like a night sky, because it also works with building exposure. So we always see the traffic light in downtown LA, and we like to see how the lights stream by and a long time exposure. So here is just a simple straight exposure, not using live composite mode. It's a little bit darker than I want, so I'm going to go a little bit brighter, and I've got a long exposure. I've only got maybe a quarter of a second, And you can now see I'm starting to get light trails from the cars, but I've got my base exposure, how I like to see the skyline. So I've got the skyline where I want it, and now I'm going to move to using the live composite feature. And the beauty of that is, like we mentioned before, it takes the first image and it uses that as its base image. As it records from there, it will only record those things that change in light intensity. So let's just say there's going to be 50 frames that it takes. I've told it to take frames 1.6 seconds apart, and it will shoot the next frame, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, frame 5, and it will build all those together like it's stacking. And it will stack those frames together, but only record what changes. So now, as you can see, I've got a little bit of a longer exposure. I didn't let it go very long, but I built up a couple of frames. Now let's go and start and stop it after maybe a minute. And now you can see how we're building up those amazing light trails and how really neat that looks. So this is maybe only about 5 frames. This one here is about 25 or 30 frames. And now I can build in my entire light look. And so I zoomed into this just to give you an idea so you can see how it looks and how all those light trails are now building. And you can see turn signals and traffic lights. And it's basically recorded now a beautiful image, 1.6 seconds apart. And it's actually showing me now. And it's showing me this as I'm working. So I can see as it builds up. Just as we do the flower, I can see that base exposure of the sky not changing. But I can see this build up as my light trails build as this basically shutter is staying open. Here's another.
Michael, we have a question that kind of pertains to this. Could we, somebody asked, how do you choose the shutter speed?
So I'm basically looking in the back of the camera, and because I'm shooting mirrorless, one of the beauties of shooting mirrorless photography is what you see is what you get. So literally I am looking in the viewfinder, or looking on the LCD in this example. And by looking at the LCD, I'm dialing in my exposure and kind of looking to where I want to see it. And, going back to here, when I first got there, this is where I first started. And I looked at it and I said, I think that's too dark. So then I wanted to basically open up my exposure. So I opened up my shutter time, my shutter speed, and gave it a longer exposure. And then my sky stays the same throughout all these. The only thing that's changing now is my light trails that are building through each frame. So I take that first base exposure and I base that on what I see in my viewfinder is how I did this. And that's the beauty of setting up any of our Panasonic cameras and using a feature called Custom Preview. And what that does is show you exactly what you're going to get. So if you don't have Custom Preview on, the camera in this nature would be, in this fact, it would be helpful. It will actually boost the exposure and show you a bright viewfinder image. But I don't want that. I want to see exactly what I'm going to be taking. Now, if you don't have a mirrorless camera, easiest way of doing that is taking a shot, then playing it back. And then you can see in that image, oh, it's too dark, I need to open it up, or it's too light, I need to close it down. But with using Custom Preview on a Panasonic mirrorless camera, basically, and you have that turned on, what you see is what you get. So you just basically set your exposure and move forward. So here we go. Let's get back to where we were. Just some really nice light trails. I hope that answered our question. Is that all we got? So I will continue to move forward.
I'm sorry, one other question. I think you just answered it. Was what kind of settings are you using while doing this light painting? But I think you just answered that.
This one is a 1.6 second shutter speed. And my f-stop was f16. And I'm at ISO 100. And you will find during all this light painting that that's pretty much what I found works really well for my style and what I'm working with, that 1.6 seconds. Now you can make that all the way up to 4 seconds, and you can make it shorter if you wish, but I find that 1.6 seems to be that sweet spot. And then I'm mainly making most of my adjustments for overall exposure to set that first base exposure by using my aperture and also by using my ISO. So let's get through that. Now here's some product photography. Here's the new S5. This is the camera that I shot those images with, and I'm using the light stick. a little bit of light stick on white to create the actual product lighting. And then I am using it on an orange mode and I'm waving it around in the background. I shot this in my kitchen on top of the granite, and that's how I'm able to get that kind of reflection with the light. I'm holding that light stick kind of far behind the camera, so that's how you get that backlight. And then the reflection is creating that kind of orange glow in the background, and I'm literally just waving the stick up and down behind it to create that top view. Here's another version of it. Just amazing what you can do with light painting and just change things from shot to shot. Here I really just worked with just light painting the product only, in nice and tight, so there's not a lot of spill of light around into the background. And mostly all my lighting is on the camera itself. And then here I started playing with color. I like color, so I set the light stick to purple. I painted the product purple, and then I want to use a complementary color. So I chose green for the background, and I just waved it around in the back real quick. And kind of got this kind of cool image with different color. Same thing here. Light painted both in white, and then did a bunch of different colors behind it. So there's some purple, there's some blue, there's some white, there's some warm tone. And because I'm working on top and kind of from the back, all that kind of creates that cool blur pattern and makes a really neat kind of product shot. Same thing here. I'm shooting the back of the camera. Camera is painted in white. So I'm using the, my white balance is set to daylight because the lightsaber, we'll call it, is kind of a daylight balance LED. And then I switched it to blue. And by blue painting over the top and behind the product, I'm not throwing any blue light onto the product at all. I'm throwing it basically onto the reflection. And so that's how I'm getting that cool reflection. And that blue background is the reflection of the light off of the granite. And then when I did the front, I held it very close to the product so that I didn't spill any of the blue light on the product. And I painted the front of the background. Really cool and really fun to do. Hope you're enjoying these. Here's some product shots. This is what I did for many, many years. I'm just showing you kind of how I did the setup. In the COVID society, I don't have a beautiful studio to work in. So this is a cookie sheet on top of a chair in my kitchen. I poured a little bit of water in it to get a cool reflection. I started off, you can see the flashlight up there on the top, but was trying to light the little beads in there, but that didn't work too well. You can see my flashlight showed up on the water. And I'm trying to do this without a lot of or any retouching. I'm trying to show you what I was able to create in camera without all the retouching magic. We all know what you can do with retouching. I come from the film days when I started, so we had to do everything right because there wasn't a lot of retouching, or retouching was super costly. So in this instance, you're seeing how my light stick on the left is very high, and my light stick on the right is giving me reflection, so I kind of have to play with it a little bit more. Here I got in a little bit closer. I'm getting those beads to light up. I'm really getting kind of a clear foreground. The only thing I'm going to retouch is that back line, which is the lip on the cookie sheet. Can't do much about that. And here we go. Get it in tight, drop it in, crop it tight. The background is actually the water for the reflection, and the texture you see is actually the Teflon coating on the cookie sheet. So you can do some cool stuff even at home by light painting. And I did this a combination of using the light stick, a cookie sheet. The bottle is actually held up with a screw. I just put it in the water and got the product to sit up above the water line, maybe, a 1/4 of an inch, and light painted it. And you get kind of a cool shot. And then I retouched out that line that shows up from the cookie sheet across the back. You can do product shots at home. Here I went to the beach. This is one of my places I almost got arrested. Had to discuss with the policeman what I was doing late at night, running around on the beach with a light stick. You can light paint large items. So this was me kind of starting. You can actually see my shadow. If you look up there on the top, I was standing too much in front of or behind the light. The light's in front of me. So we need to work a little bit more on that. Got it a little bit better, got a little brighter. I used red on the bottom. I was doing my red a little bit too much. You can see I got some streaks of light there, so I wanted to work some more. Then I got it down pretty well, and I wanted to do light on the bottom so you can see this is the fun part of light painting. You got to do it over and over till you get it right. So I was getting there. I got the lifeguard stand pretty good. I actually did this in 2 sets. I painted the lifeguard walkway or the ramp and the standing area with a warm light. And then I painted the lifeguard tower with a white light. Came out really neat. But when I did the red light, you can see me standing there in my shorts on all my feet as I painted. So I kept working. But the beauty of this is I'm able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to show you one other thing here real quick. Let's switch back to me live. There we are. This is my S5 setup I was using for the beach shot. And I have my Atomos Ninja 5 on top, but it is turned around backwards. So I have it facing the subject rather than facing behind the camera as you would normally use it. And the reason I do that is as I'm light painting, and I'm like when I'm doing the beach shot, I could be away from it and I can look and see that large monitor and get an idea of, am I in the right spot? Am I too bright? Am I too dark? Am I out of a light shot? So I'm able to actually kind of edit as I work. So I find this very useful to use an external monitor when you are doing big things like this and you're not working from behind camera, or if you are light painting, you're doing it from a distance away from camera and you want to kind of see what's going on. So there's one way to do it. And I've got, I think, one more. Nope, I'm going to move on to my car shot. I love this one. This was fun. So this is my truck in the parking lot at the high school across the street. This was another day where the Torrance Police Department wanted to know what I was doing. Talked my way out of it. So I've got kind of an idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to get this kind of shot, wanted to show kind of the lines of the truck, wanted to be kind of neat, something different. So just to give you an idea how this built up, I'm going to show you some building images as I was kind of planning it out as I worked at night. And then I've got a video of how it went as well, and we'll kind of scroll through it and make it move real quick. But I wanted to build the shape of the truck. So I'm holding this light bar parallel to the ground rather than vertically. And I'm running it around that top lip there. You can see it, and it creates that nice long line on the top frame of the door line. And that gives you kind of the design of the truck. Then I kind of worked horizontally with the light bar a little bit further away so I'd get some reflection in the glass and build up my exposure. And you can see there on the back, I got a little bit too forward of the camera and you can actually see the light bar. So I had to start over again. Then I wanted to figure out how I would do the front. And the beauty of this is chrome. You're able to paint the chrome from, say, left to right. So on that front grille, rather than just lighting it in one area, the beauty about light painting is it's building and building and building that exposure. So I'm able to walk across the front of the chrome and it gets very evenly lit. Really neat way of doing things. I love light painting, as you can see.
Mike, can I ask a quick question? Michael?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go. Now I can. So somebody asked, can you walk us through this without the composite setting? So let's say this is available on the Lumix G100 and the S5, but let's say they have a G85. Sort of, how was the old way of doing this, or the way of doing this without composite?
Is just like I've been doing, but of course you're not going to be able to see what your mid result is. You won't see it until the end because you're leaving the shutter open. You will not see as it's building. So in other words, you're going to photograph your image, leave your shutter speed open, like when I used to do it in the film days, and you're going to have to go across and do your whole painting of your subject. Now, if you're doing the flowers, that's not too bad because you're doing that for maybe 5 minutes, and then you can preview your image and look at it and go, oh, I got in the way, or I got my light too close or too far, or in the shot, or whatever I wanted to do. The ability to do it with composite just gives you the ability to preview your work as you're working. So any of this can be done with any camera, whether it's film, digital, whether it has live composite mode or not. It's just the point that you're able to, with live composite mode, to see what you're doing as you work. Now, the process is exactly the same, no different. So in instance, we would do the same thing. I would plan out how I'm going to do my car, but I wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing. It would be dark, basically. So that is where the difference would be, whether you're using live composite mode or not. Does that answer the question, I think?
I think it does. Yeah. Basically, it's the way I used to do it, which is you might have a 1 minute exposure and then run around with the flashlight, but you wouldn't see it until you were done. Yeah.
Exactly. You do not see what you're doing.
Now I can see my mistake and I can stop it if I light an area up too much or something like that.
Up the back of the truck well enough, or I have too much light on the top of my flower, or when I did my flashlight, I did it for, back in the day I would count. So I'd go, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. And then when I looked at my image afterward, then I would say, oh, wow, the flashlight portion was too strong. So rather than doing it for 9 seconds, let's try 5 seconds. That's the advantage or disadvantage of not having a live preview, that you don't get the ability to see as you build it. But all this stuff can be done that same way. It's no different.
Thank you.
So let's run through this video real quick. So here's what I'm doing. I'm setting my exposure. There's my 1.6 seconds. I'm not going to change my f-stop to f22 in this respect. There it is. And my ISO is at 100. I'm going to go back to 100 here. There we go. I'm going to turn on live composite. I'm going to tell the camera to start. The camera asks me to set the shutter speed and ISO sensitivity. I'm going to press the shutter. It's now creating that dark frame, and then it's telling me it'll start when I tap the shutter button. So now I've tapped the shutter button, and if you'll notice on the bottom right-hand corner, it says 1.6 seconds times 4 times 7 times 8, and you can see that's telling me how many frames I'm shooting. And as I'm moving along, it's building each one of those frames for me as it's going along. Now, if I didn't have live composite mode, this is giving you an idea exactly of how I did this, how I walked across with this light parallel to the ground and created that stripe on the side of the car. Now I'm working on that front by the front left headlight, or the driver's side headlight. Now I'm working down toward the tire. Now I'm going to work across the doors of the car a little bit lower, just above the running board, and walking along, doing another horizontal line. Now I'm working on that back rim and tire. Now I'm going to come across and try and fill in some of the exposure of the mid areas by now holding the light vertically. And then I'm going to come in and get the rim a little bit, the front rim. And then you'll notice I'm going to go to a flashlight now, and I'm now building the tread of the tire, front tire. And then I will build the tread of the back tire. So I'm basically painting in everywhere where I want to see highlight. I think next I did the top of the car. We'll see. This is like 5 minutes, so I will scrub through so we don't spend all this time on it. But I'm actually doing now the front of the car. So now you can see I'm building up the chrome and then building up the front bumper. Here we go. I'm going across and doing that grill. So you can see I can paint. I'm going back and forth right now. You can see how I paint that front grill out and get that chrome looking really good. Now I want to create some shape across the bottom and get the running board. So there's the running board. Create some shape there. Now I need to do the top of the truck. Now I want to get that detail on the hood. I want to get some more of the top of the truck. I can't see much of the top of the truck. I left the visor down. I did retouch that out. I shouldn't have done that. Now you can see I'm putting some red lights across the bottom. So I went across the back of the truck and put my wand on red and created those little paths of light across the bottom to separate the bottom of the car from the dark background. Now I'm doing the back tail light and the back section back there. Now I'm going to come across and work on the passenger side to separate it from the background. And I'm going to work on the top of the hood. And I'm done. Pretty cool. There's my finished shot with a very little bit of retouching. Came out really fun. Love this shot. Took me about, I think, 38 minutes to do the last shot. Took me probably an hour total to pull it up, look at it, kind of plan out how I'm doing it, get through a couple of first shots, and then 38 minutes to paint the final. Now here's another thing with live composite view. Star trails. My associate in Texas had clear skies because unfortunately those of us in Portland and Los Angeles had smoky skies. So I asked him to send me his image that he shot. Another beauty of light composite or live view composite, where it's going to hold that base exposure for the foreground and the city view, but only build up the star trails. So for those of you that do astrophotography, live view composite gives you, again, the ability to see what you're doing and stop the exposure. Whereas if you did not have live composite view, you can just preview it afterward. Same thing here, another live composite view. Letting the exposures build up. Working light trails, kind of like I did. Sean did this also in downtown. So basically your exposure for the buildings would stay the same, and you're building that light trail as those goes across the bottom and lights up the roadway. Now we're going to switch into high ISO photography, and I'm going to ask Mark to talk about a few of his images. He gave me a few of his high ISO, and I'm going to talk about some of the technical features of Panasonic cameras that make high ISO photography so fun. We're at almost 40 minutes, so we're doing well, and we're going to move on. So Mark, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so one of my favorite features of our S-series cameras and our GH5S is the dual ISO. And it allows me to take pictures at ISO 4000, 6400. I was even at a dark car museum yesterday taking pictures at 12,800. And combined with stabilization, I'm hand holding this at night. This is in Seattle, obviously, and I can still get a decent aperture. I don't have to be wide open, which is nice. So anyways, that's yeah. Things like this also. I wish we could see this at higher resolution, but the bandwidth makes it. But you can see the exact expression on the guy holding the little girl in the train there as it comes at me at the Christmas train. And this is ISO 10,000. And again, it doesn't come across as good online here because of the bandwidth, but there is very little grain in this. I can easily make a 16 by 20 print out of this, and you wouldn't know the difference. Same thing with this, night scenes. This is rainy Portland, so I don't want to be setting up a tripod and all that. I just want to be walking around with my camera, snapping pictures. And again, 12,800.
Yeah.
And again, if you could see this, you can read everything on the signs. You can read everything down the street.
You would think this was shot at ISO 400 when you first look at the image.
Exactly, yes. And what dual ISO does, basically the sensor resets when it gets to a higher ISO. So ISO 4000 can look as good as 400. So in a lot of situations, I'll just automatically raise my ISO to 4000, 6400. This again, this was at night during a train here that's outdoors here in Portland. And I wanted depth of field. So I wanted to be able to shoot this at f11, so I just went to ISO 20,000, which still lets me get a lot of depth of field. Same thing with this little town near where I live in near Oregon City, Oregon. And just walking down the street, I'm a street shooter. I just like to walk around with my camera with the kit lens and just shoot away. And ISO, the high ISO lets me do that.
I love this one.
Yeah, this does not convey how dark this bar is when you're there, when you look through the viewfinder. But the decor here, and again, I could go to, I can't remember what ISO this is at. It's not on this one, but I think it was at ISO probably 10,000.
If I remember correctly, it was 10,000.
Yeah, and just the dynamic range, even at that ISO, that captures the bottles, the Jockey Club sign up there at the top, the lights. Again, a lot of times I'll just set my camera on this, but it's in a place like Portland where it's darker most of the time. And again, here I want depth of field. I don't want shallow depth of field.
So there's what I was doing the other couple days. I had the S5, and again, dual native ISO. It allows two separate, basically ISO curves. If you think about how a sensor works, sensors basically use power to generate voltage that goes to the sensor. As you boost the voltage on that circuit, it raises the ISO. In the process of doing that, it increases the noise. Well, the beauty of working with cameras that have dual native ISO is there are two separate circuits, as Mark noted, one that's sometimes at 400 and one at 4,000. So like on the S5, if I shoot above ISO 4,000, in this instance at ISO 5,000, I get the same grain structure, whether I'm shooting color or black and white. This one on the left is shot in vivid picture profile. The one on the right is shot in my favorite L monochrome D picture profile, which gives me black and white monochrome images that mimic Tri-X film. And no matter what you do using these sensors or using the dual native feature, you can shoot at ISO 5000, yet have the grain structure that you'd be used to, say, maybe at 400 or at 800. So by shooting, this was in downtown LA, but the Caltrans building, I mean, it is pretty dark. I know that sign looks lit up, but I'll be honest with you, it is very dark standing in that center there out in front of the sign. And it's amazing what you can do in low light situations. Here's the building down by Samys across from LACMA. There's just the street lights basically illuminating it. And I'm shooting it at ISO 5000 and getting clean, amazing images. Here's in front of that building, the Berlin Wall piece. You can see my little shadow there. It's just lit from the street lights. But look how clean that image really is. This was just the other day. I mean, it's incredible what dual native ISO technology can do. Here's one of my favorite subjects down by Samy's, which is the lights in front of LACMA. I love to shoot black and white photography. So this is ISO 5000, L monochrome D, and just getting some incredible stuff. I'm shooting at a pretty good shutter speed. I think it was 125th of a second. And I had an f-stop of around f11. 16 to 35, 2.8, or 16 to 35 f4, sorry, on my S5. Here it is in color. I like the black and white images better. There it is in black and white. I mean, just super, super clean. And I'm going to go to one here in a minute where I zoomed in. It's just crazy how grain-free these images are. And then because of image stabilization, like Mark was talking about, and high ISO, I'm literally walking away and I see this lady turn around and look at me as she's trying to take her picture and do her friend her shot, and another couple over there hugging and kissing. And all I'm doing is holding the camera on my hip and firing away. Autofocus is taking care of everything. And I'm just shooting and I'm not even looking really. And I'm getting these kind of cool motion images. Neat feel. Again, all at ISO 5000. I mean, look at this. This is just lit from the street lights and the little bit of light that goes around the new building there for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Gentleman walking by, just super, super clean. This will blow you away. Here's the front of all the new Motion Picture Arts and Science building. I think it used to be the May Company many, many years ago. And they did all the new gold work up there. Looks fantastic, ISO 5000. And here I went up to the detail on it. All I did was zoom in on that same shot. This is not a quicker shot, a shot close up with a longer lens. I took the 16 to 35 and I just cropped it in just so you can see the amazing detail and low grain at ISO 5000. Who would ever think about, I would never have thought about shooting at ISO 5000. But with our cameras that have dual native ISO 5000 is nothing. It's super clean. It's like shooting at ISO 400. Here's the Peterson Museum. Again, color, black and white on the right. My preference, I like the black and white. That's just me. But I love to show people that the color is just as effective. Great stuff. Now we can use dual native ISO on a few of our cameras. On the G series line, that's GH5S. And on the S series cameras, it's the S15, the new one, the S1, and the S1H. And here we are, Lumix S5. You can even take that 5000 ISO and use it on video. Here I am doing a hyperlapse. This is at 2 frames a second as I drive through downtown LA with just the camera on my dashboard. I'll go back, play it for you one more time. Camera's on my dashboard on a little tiny tripod. Set it 2 frames a second, and I just drove my car at 30 miles an hour and got that really great footage. All shot ISO 5000, autofocus. Here's the fountains of an S5, ISO 5000, 180 frames per second, so I'm doing slow motion. giving that water that nice, amazing effect. All this is really lit by is those small little lights underneath the fountains. And behind me are 2 light panels. Nothing else in the area was off. It was closed. I was very late at night. Here it is at regular speed, 60 frames per second, 1080p resolution. Again, lit only with 2 big light panels behind, meaning light panels, meaning giant LCD screens that are advertising, and the lights of the fountain. It's pretty dark. Here's a nighttime shot, ISO 5000 of a parking garage. I mean, look at the tones on the highlights, the shadows, the mid-tones. It's unbelievable how clean ISO 5000 can be. That's my favorite picture profile, L monochrome D, available on most of our cameras. Here is the Memorial Coliseum the other night when it was lit up red for COVID-19. They had the torch lit, had a bunch of red lights all over the place, lighting it up red. But then as I turned, I noticed the rest of the park there was very, very dark. But look what you can do at ISO 5000, image stabilization, handheld. It was just crazy how great this camera can handle black and white images in almost darkness. It was hard for me to even kind of walk around. It was so dark, but look at this tree and then look at it. I'm just zooming in. This is not zooming in the camera. This is cropping into that image at 400%. Just crazy. ISO 5000 with a dual native ISO Panasonic camera. These are full frame with the S5. Super clean, great capabilities. I'm hardly doing any retouching on any of these. I like to show more the images as they come from camera. Again, black and white. This is on a side street in downtown LA. It is really, really dark. I had to get my flashlight out to kind of see where I was setting my camera and working. But I love just like the illumination on the inside of the building and the headlights of cars lighting up the rest of the building on the outside. So when I was at the beach the other day, I saw these great trails, you know, from the trucks that go up and down the beach. And because of COVID, there's not many people, so the trails are very evident. And I love the shadows and everything that was going on. But it was pitch dark. It was very, very dark. So this is wide open at f4 at a half a second at ISO 25,600. And of course, the lighting that's up there is 17 million different colors, and I think that's the beauty of it. The green light from the sodium vapor kind of gave it kind of a cool look. But again, thinking about this, I would never have thought of shooting at 25,600. So then, of course, I turned and walked out on the beach and looked at where I shot before with my light painting, and it's pitch black, but I'm still able to get an image at half a second, wide open, ISO 25,600. And I've got something pretty acceptable. It's amazing of the technology now in sensors and in image stabilization. Now you can see the shot that I did before is pretty backlit, but I went all the way to 51,200, half a second at 5.6. The smoke in the sky was reflecting all the light, so it was so bright I didn't want to blow that out anymore. So I did have to stop down to 5.6. But again, I probably have something that I can work with at 51,200. And I mean, I'm tripping over myself walking through the sand. It's so dark. Again, ISO 5000. This is the Pier in Redondo. Again, shooting black and white, L monochrome D. All shot high ISO. Do not be scared to shoot high ISO. Go out and play with it. You can do so many great things. Here's another one of these shots. I'm just kind of walking, holding my camera vertically. I don't even want them to know that I'm really photographing them. I'm not going to stop and compose the image. I'm just going to snap away as I go. It's going to one of my favorite ways to do things at night and do street photography. I love the way the light played on the stuff from the top, so I shot a quick shot of that. I love this like park bench with beautiful shadows. Again, 50 or ISO 5000, but notice the shadows are clean, the highlights are clean, the whites aren't blown out. There's actually details there. Pretty amazing at ISO 5000. So I'm going to wrap it up. We can answer some questions. I want to say thank you to Samy's Camera as we're coming up here close to our hour. So again, thank you to Samy's for allowing us to present. I wish to wish them a very, very happy 44th anniversary. I have been associated with Samy's either as a customer or as a rep now for probably over 30 years. So it's really great to have this opportunity to come back and celebrate with them and be part of this. My name is Michael Richardson. You can reach me at 310-386-9154. So if you have any questions on light painting, or if you're considering purchasing a Panasonic camera, or you want to purchase a Panasonic camera and have questions, I'm more than happy to answer. You can also shoot me an email, michaelrichardson@uspanasonic.com. And you can find me on Instagram at mirrorless_Mike or Mike@Lumix.
So, Michael, we also want to mention, in conjunction with Samy's 44th anniversary, they're doing no tax sale, and
Yep.
we're adding to that with a 10% discount on Lumix cameras and lenses through September 23rd. So it's in the chat, but if you use the code Panasonic 10, the numbers, either at Samy's online or in any of the Samy's stores, you'll get that 10% discount plus no tax.
And I'm going to do one more shameless plug today because I am a Panasonic employee. And if you like those images from the S5 we just introduced a few weeks ago, I believe shipping will start probably in the next week. You actually, if you pre-order now, you get a free 45mm 2.8 Sigma Prime with your pre-order before September 30th. I got to add my little shameless plug, but I wish to thank, of course, everyone for attending today. I wish to thank Samy's for allowing us to present. I've got, let's see, another one. If you want to talk about live streaming, we're going to be doing a little presentation on live streaming in about another 2 hours at 1 o'clock. And we'll go over a lot of live streaming suggestions on how to make you look better on Zoom, whether you're using a GH5 and a 42.5mm or maybe an S-series camera. I'll go through everything from how to start, how to change your what you're doing now, whether you're using just a laptop camera, maybe moving on to using a G-series camera or an S-series camera, adding lighting, changing camera angles, working with a switcher, all kinds of different things we'll talk about between 1 and 2. And then I'm going to also do another shameless plug for on Thursday night between 7 and 8, we have Panasonic Playbook. It's kind of a new feature for us where we are going to go live for an hour and answer questions. So if you'd like to drop in and ask questions, or you just want to lurk and see what other people are asking, it's going to be a very informal hour where you can spend some time with me. If there aren't any questions, I'll go into maybe some demos. We'll talk about some Panasonic gear. But it's not just Panasonic, it's about photography. So if you want to talk about photography, or you want to talk about a specific image that you shot, bring it to share with everybody, and we'll talk about how you did it, or how I'm going to do something, or we'll just talk about something planned like light painting. So again, thank you very much for allowing us to present.
We have two, Michael, we have a couple of questions.
Up, and then we'll cover some questions.
Okay, we have 2 questions. Okay.
Yep.
When you have the really colorful backdrop, like for the floral pictures at the beginning, okay, how do you do that? And the person said, I realize it's a light stick or wand, but I don't know how you get all that nice texture. I'm a light painting rookie, just started.
No problem. So I'm using a, let me go to my background here. So you're right, I'm using my light stick to paint it. But if you want the texture, my background is actually a muslin fabric. So I'm going to step out of camera here a second. I'm going back, almost there. Come on. I went the wrong way. Hold on. Let's just do it this way. I'm going to scroll through. Here we go. Play. All right. So I have a textured background like this. So the one I have up right now is just some clouds. This one has the actual pattern. And then I am taking my light stick and I am changing it to blue or red, but in this case it was blue. So you can see the blue that is, and I can paint that over the texture, and you can kind of see how that pattern, let me get in the camera there. There we go. So you can kind of see how that pattern comes out. So if you can picture this in pitch black, that'll give you an idea of how I'm getting that texture and that color. I am into vibrant colors, so I'm using a picture profile called Vivid, and that gives me those kind of punchier colors. But a lot of it is the way in which I've got that deep, deep blue light, and my blue light is direct onto the background. So there's no other light spilling on the backdrop to change that exposure or to change like white light bleeding onto it. That's how I get those really, really pure, beautiful colors. Hope that answers your question. Anything else, Mark?
I'm sorry. There we are. One more question. So one person asked, one thing I don't understand about my G85 is when I'm shooting in the dark, when I press the shutter halfway down, the photo in the viewfinder, not the photo, the viewfinder will brighten up when they're looking at it. But then when they press the shutter down, it gets darker.
Yep, that's basically make sure you have constant preview on. And what that's doing is just boosting the exposure for a second. But when it goes back to the darker, that will be equal to what you're shooting. So it's just boosting the image so it can get the information, and then it's going to your custom preview.
Yeah, it's letting you see it at a brighter setting than it's actually going to shoot it at. Yeah. Okay, and let me just run through and make sure we're not missing anything. No, somebody asked, the light bar that you're using has color and white balance changes. Do you know what brand it is offhand?
You know, I don't know the brand, and I'll just say this. I got it online. I'm sorry.
And Samy should have something like that. Samy has
we have a full selection.
They do have everything in their lighting department. Yeah.
So contact Samy's in the lighting department, and you'll definitely no problem.
Yeah, most lighting now does have brightness and white balance, color balance settings.
So I'm able to change it. There's purple. Well, hold on. I'm doing it, and I'm not even got you on. So there's the regular white. There's a little bit warmer. There's a warmer light, almost like you would be working with an incandescent bulb. That is the red. Then there's green. There's blue. There's a yellow, kind of a purplish pink, kind of a teal color, and then this great little flashing thing. Tends to get the, and then I also have the ability to add intensity, so I can bring it up or I can bring it down.
And I tend to use the smaller, like little rectangular LED lights that have the color setting too, and there's a million of those available too. Samys has it all.
Samys has it all. You can buy the little aperture lights, you can buy the Lumix.
Yes.
Pretty much anything like that will work. Any flashlight that Samys carries, any strobe unit, whether you're buying a brand new one or in their used department, there's all kinds of things you can use. Just be cautious of what your light balance is. So make sure you have the appropriate color setting for your white balance. And other than that, get out, get in the dark, dance in the dark, and paint with some light and be creative.
Well, thank you, Michael.